has read The Lord of the Rings?
Right.
Raise your hands. We're going to check. Some people have some reading to do here, I can see. Okay. I've got two questions about The Lord of the Rings here. First of all, it's a trilogy. What's the name of the first volume?
Fellowship of the Rings.
Fellowship of the Ring, right,
Yeah.
okay. And the next question, which leads into our title for this morning, is in the Fellowship of the Rings, what is meant by the fellowship? I've got a harder question now. Who or what is meant by the fellowship? The guy in the front row down there?
It's the 9 chosen people to carry the ring on the quest.
Okay, is he right? Yeah. So there were 9 people who were chosen to go with Frodo on his quest there. So what we're going to talk about today is not I'm sorry to say the Lord of the Rings, but Christian fellowship and why it's important. So I've been an academic all my life, and in academia people are into defining things. So let's just define our terms as we start here, so we know what we're talking about and what our underlying assumptions are. So first of all, the word fellowship. Well, so I looked up some dictionary definitions and so on here, and among other things, fellowship means companionship, it means community, and it's people who have a common interest and are doing something together. That obviously ties in with the Lord of the Rings there. So that's one thing we should clarify there. Then, so that's what's meant by fellowship. And then the next word so we're talking about Christian fellowship. So the next word is what's meant by Christian there, and that's definitely worth explaining, because there are a lot of misunderstandings about what it is to be a Christian. Now, there are a whole bunch of countries in the Middle East and Asia that we get labeled as Muslim countries. And in those countries, they would think of someone from a non-Muslim country as being a Christian country, as being a Christian. But merely being born from a country which might get a demographic label of being a Christian country, that doesn't make someone a Christian. If someone is Jewish, it's because of their ancestry. One is not a Christian because your parents were Christians. What a Christian is, what the word means, is a follower of Jesus. In fact, when the word Christian was first used, it was somewhat of a sort of nickname for them. Christian meant a little Christ. They were so keen on following Jesus, they were called little Christ there. And I'm going to say, following a Christian, following Jesus, it's following Jesus in the way that he wanted to be followed. And Jesus said, not everybody who says, Lord, Lord, is going to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's people who followed him in the way that he wanted to be followed there. So, again, there are many things that a Christian is not. It's a conscious decision to follow Jesus. There's a great saying that Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. It's a relationship with Jesus. And the Bible speaks of that as being like marriage, only even more intimate than marriage there. So it's not who your parents are, it's not the country you're born in, it's a lot of other things it's not too. It's not because you were baptized as a baby, Hitler, for example, was baptized as a baby, and I don't expect to see Hitler in heaven when I get there. Maybe you do, I'm not. It's not because you do religious things. It's not because you go to church. And there's a great joke, by the way. It says, being inside a church doesn't make you a Christian any more than being inside a garage makes you a car. That's a good one there. A Christian is not just somebody who believes that God exists. The Bible says that the devil believes God exists, and he trembles because of that. So, again, it's a very close follow of Jesus, following Jesus in the way in which he wanted to be. So, when we talk about Christian fellowship, that's what we're talking about there. We're talking about companionship, comradeship, community among people who are serious about following Jesus, who want to know the most that they can about following Jesus, want to grow in their knowledge there. Okay, now, something one occasionally hears, and probably we've all met somebody who's said this, and that is, oh, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church. Or, no, I want to be a Christian without going to church, or the Bible doesn't say the Christian should go to church. Has anybody heard anything like that? Maybe last week or something. Yeah, it's one of the very, very commonly hears, and that's one of the big things that I want to talk about today. So let's take this statement. Though the Bible doesn't say Christians should go to church. Now, if one is using the word church in our pretty common English sense of a building, like this one here, in which Christians gather, then it's true. The Bible does not say that for a very simple reason, that the Greek word which leads to our word church was not used until about 200 years, more than 200 years after the Bible was written. That wasn't around there. That word is the word which gives the German word Kirche, and hence our English word church. It meant a sort of sacred building where Christians gather. But that's not what's meant in the Bible. What is used instead is a word, tell if I pronounce this wrong, ecclesia, from which we get our English word ecclesiastical, and from which the French get their word église, meaning a church there. There's another word used, so the word ecclesia means a gathering. It was used, it wasn't made in the Bible, it was used, that was you can find it in like Plato and so on. It was used to some gathering, an assembly there of people. The other word that is used is synagoge, from which we get our English word synagogue, and again it's a gathering there. So this is what the Bible is talking about, not a building, but about a gathering there. So once we recognize that, there is an explicit command in the Bible to go to church, to gather together in that sense. And that verse is Hebrews 10:25, and it's a command. Actually, it's a double negative. It says, "Do not forsake assembling yourselves together." In other words, do assemble to get there. So if somebody says, "Where in the Bible does it say that we should go to church?" Well, remember that verse for starters, Hebrews 10:25. Now, that's going to be our one memory verse of the day here. It's useful to not just remember what a verse says, don't forsake gathering together, but it says, but also to know where it is in the Bible. So, okay, so show me. Okay, so it's Hebrews 10:25, and here's Hebrews. You have to remember on your own, but I'll give you a little handle to remember the chapter and the verse number. 10:25. 10:25 is 10:24 plus 1. I see some people laughing. Okay, what is 10:24? Has anybody is on before? Some of you grinning. What is it? Parts of 2? Many math people here. it's 2 to the 10th, right? It's 1024, and it's the number of, for a computer note, it's the number of bytes in a kilobyte. 1024, aha! And it's the number of kilobytes in a megabyte. 1024. So just go one more than that, and you've got Hebrews 1025. I will quiz you on that later. Right. Okay. So not only is this command for Christians to gather together, but the Bible also gives us reasons. And Hebrews 10:25 is, as you might suspect, after Hebrews 10:24. And there are like 3 related verses there. And what they do is they give us reasons why we should assemble. So the main thing we need to do today is to go through those reasons there in Hebrews 10 and elsewhere in the Bible. So if we read 10:24, remember that's 1 kilobyte, then it says, reads correctly, let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and to good deeds. So right there, in that verse, there are 2 reasons why we should be gathered together, and hopefully why we're gathered here today. So number 1 is to stimulate each other to love. Why do we need stimulating to love? Well, I would say that it's our natural tendency, if we're left for ourselves, is to be self-absorbed. And we actually need an outside stimuli to think about others. And if we're left to ourselves, we tend to just think about ourselves and not about others there. How can we be stimulated? Well, one is hearing ways in which we can love, and that we should love. So Jesus commands in the Bible that we should love our enemies. That's not something people tend to come up with on their own. Love our friends, maybe. Love our family, maybe. But love our enemies, no, that's not something we come up with on our own. So we need to be reminded of that. And if I see an example of love, then this kind of stimulates saying, wait a bit, I should love too, and maybe who's being loved is not someone I would naturally love. Okay, I should be loving that person too. So to stimulate each other to love is part of the command there, and then to stimulate each other to good deeds. And this is again of letting us know in ways in which we can serve people and giving an example to follow. Now, if I read it in full, Hebrews 10:24 and 10:25, it says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, so there's a problem back then, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So this gives us another reason why we should gather together to encourage one another. Encouragement is really important. It's the antidote to discouragement. One can be discouragement when you're faced with obstacles, difficulties, challenges, and so on. And discouragement will stop people from doing things. But on the other hand, encouragement, it provides us with emotional strength to persevere. It reassures us of what we're capable of doing. And encouragement can be from a kind word, a gesture, a thumbs up sign. If you were running in long distance races, as some of us have done, then often the bystanders will get a thumbs up sign as you run by, or shout something to it. That's really encouraging to finish the race there. If I read elsewhere in Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews, who some people think was Barnabas, whose name means son of encouragement. In Hebrews, the 3rd chapter, he says, encourage one another every day, as long as it's still called today. Every day is today, so encourage one another. So that none of you have been hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So there's a reason they're encouraging. And if you get discouraged, that can lead to sin there. Now, the writer of Hebrews is far from the only person in the Bible to say things about encouragement. St. Paul gives commands to encourage one another too. In one of the first letters he wrote, about less than 20 years after Jesus rose from the dead, in 1 Thessalonians, he says, chapter 4, therefore encourage one another. There it is again. Chapter 5, he says twice, he says, encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing. And a bit later in that same chapter, encourage the faint-hearted. People are really needing encouraging there. St. Paul, writing to the Colossians, tells them that he has sent a disciple called Tychicus to them, that he may encourage your hearts. And then later, Paul is writing to Timothy, and in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2, he says, that he wants Timothy to encourage people. And the theme of encouragement can be found elsewhere in Scripture. I thought it would be good to just give a couple of examples of encouragement. Now, on January the 1st, what do people do on January the 1st?
Stop drinking.
Stop doing something they shouldn't be doing. What else?
They recover.
Yeah, okay. But what else do people do on January 1st? They make New Year's resolutions, right? Do you know, so this has been studied, of course, and do you know what percentage of people have kept up their New Year's resolutions all the way to December the 31st?
None?
It's not none, I believe it's around, according to which study you look at it, it's around 10% or so. In fact, by the end of January, only 31 days later, half of them have quit what they would do, they resolved to do. But there's a major exception to this. Well, for example, people might decide they want to have more exercise or something. But there's one notable exception there, and that is people who exercise with other people. If you decide, okay, I'm going to go running with my wife, with my son, or something, you're much more likely to be still doing it on December 31st or even 10 years later than if you just decide to do it on your own there. And in Bonnydoon Church here, we have sports reports. We didn't have one this morning. So here's a somewhat late sports report. It's actually from 2016, so it's like 9 years ago. And as many of you know, I like to run half marathons. And in 2016, I set my personal record for running the San Lorenzo Trail Run. It's what's called an ultra half marathon. By the way, the ultra doesn't mean it's longer than a half marathon, it just means it goes up and down a lot. Okay, so I ran my best time. And afterwards, I gave credit to our niece, Eleanor. Now, her dad, Nick, was a bit puzzled by that, I remember, and he kind of wondered why. Because Eleanor actually had not run in that race with me, so why have I given credit to her for that? Well, here are some reasons.
You gave your briefcase.
She gave my briefcase. I don't run with a briefcase, and it's not usual. So there were three things that Eleanor did. So I'd be working at home on my computer, and it's in the afternoon, and Eleanor would cheerfully come along and say, "I'd like to go for a run." Okay, and we'd go for a run. If she had not come, the chances are I would have kept working on my computer and maybe not run that afternoon. Okay, now when I go running with Eleanor, here's an easy question for you. Who do you think is the fastest runner? Is it me or is it Eleanor? She's definitely faster than me. So when I run with Eleanor, it pushes me along, makes me run faster. Okay, so two things there. One is I might not run at all without her asking me. I run faster. And another thing is when we're running, we yak and talk away, and sometimes we say, "Oh, well, let's just go over that hill there somewhere," and so we end up running further. So her participation has got me doing something, doing it more, and doing it better there. Now, for there to be encouragement, there obviously has to be some contact there. And that contact is easiest and best in person. It can also be in writing or by telephone or something. In fact, the letter of the Hebrews was written by somebody, perhaps Barnabas there. But some other kind of contact is usually most effective when there's already been some personal connection there. So we're not sure who wrote Hebrews, but the people who received the letter knew who he was, and he refers to people in it. So he was well known to them there. Now, if you can remember the verses we read from Hebrews and elsewhere, there were two words that came together. This is your advanced quiz here. There were two words that came together a number of times. Can anybody remember what they were?
Encourage one another.
What's the word after encourage? Words after encourage there?
To love
One another. That pair of words occurs repeatedly in passages in Hebrews we looked at, and elsewhere too. And he said it's another reason why the Christian fellowship is important. In fact, I'm told that the pair of words one another occurs 60 times in the New Testament. That's a lot of times. And in addition to the command to encourage one another, there are about 30 distinct positive one another commands there. So here's a quick list I'm just going to read to you of them, so you get the idea, and we'll dwell on a couple in slight detail. Okay, first of all, love one another. That's what I'm definitely going to say more about. Love one another. Be devoted to one another. Build one another up, care for one another, serve one another, bear one another's burdens, speak to one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. I guess we didn't do a psalm this morning, but we've done some of that this morning. Teach one another, comfort one another, encourage one another. We've been talking about that. Exhort one another, show hospitality to one another. And the last one I'll mention is employ the gifts God has given us for the benefit of one another. And that one I'm going to expand on as well. Now, Jesus was asked, what was the greatest commandment? What did he say?
Love one another. Love each other.
What did he say was the first and greatest commandment?
Love the Lord your God.
You should all have this memorized. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and so on. And then he says, and the second one is like unto it. What's the second one is to love your neighbor as yourself there. It's sometimes translated in English as neighbor, and one might wonder, okay, who is it that we're supposed to love? What does neighbor mean there? Well, neighbor is an accurate English translation of the Greek word, but neither word means the person who lives next door. So loving one's neighbor is not just of the guy next door. Interestingly, the person who asked Jesus that question asked a follow-on question, or at least on another occasion Jesus asked this question, and Jesus explained who the neighbor is, and he told a parable about that. A very famous parable is the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's the man who is on the road to Jericho, and he gets beaten up and robbed, and the guy who comes and takes care of him is a guy from Samaria. And I hope everyone knows the story. It's a great story. It's in Luke 10, it's like verse 30 there. Now, and so things to note about that, very important is the Samaritan was from a different country. He's from a different ethnic group. He spoke a different dialect. I'm not sure how similar the two languages were. They're probably mutually comprehensible. So, just to someone from Israel, he at least had an accent there, and those are good things for us to remember in our present times. There. Okay, so Jesus had two commandments here. Now, let's suppose that we have a married couple, and suppose that the husband says, "I love my wife." Okay, that's good. But let's suppose he never spends any time with his wife except for 1 hour on Christmas Eve. Now, I don't know about you, but I would kind of doubt somewhat that husband really did love his wife there. I think you see the analogy I'm making there. Let's suppose that, again, it's a different married couple, let's say, and the wife has just 2 things she really wants her husband to do. 2 very reasonable things, I'm sure they are. But he doesn't do them. And again, we'd say that, well, I think that there's something wrong with their relationship there. He's really bugged his wife, he doesn't do this, and he does this or doesn't do it. So I think it's also similar when Jesus is giving us instruction and commands, and we ignore some of them. We kind of say, I'm not so sure about that person's relationship with Jesus there. Well, coming back to the one another's, the first one of those is to love one another, and we actually had our ladies trio sing about that earlier in the service. They sang the next verse I want to read, which is from John 13. It's verses 34 and 35. It says, "For I'm giving you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you, that you also love one another." And furthermore, he goes in the next verse to say, "By this will all people know that you're my disciples, if you have love for one another." So this then is the mark of the true followers of Jesus. It's if they love one another. But loving one another can really only happen if people, they know each other and they get together there. And of the many other one another's I've quickly listed off there, they also they kind of arise from loving one another. So we have bear one another's burdens. We have comfort one another, be devoted to one another, serve one another, encourage one another. It's kind of obvious that you have to have a contact in order to do all those things. To do something for something, you kind of got to be there. The Greek word translated fellowship in the Bible is a word very well known in some Christian circles. It's koinonia. And I looked up in a Greek dictionary what is koinonia, and it means fellowship, as we're talking about here, but it also means a sense of contribution. We're contributing to something, participating, and being partners in something, or also sharing common property. When Acts talks about the fellowship among the early believers, and they were sharing things in common there. That was also koinonia. The list of one another's there, the last one there was to employ the gifts God has given us for the benefit of one another. Both St. Paul and St. Peter in the Bible make it clear that every believer has a spiritual gift. You find lists of these in 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, and 1 Peter 4. So examples, if you're not familiar with these, would be, let's read on a few here, would be administration, the gifts of giving, gift of helping people, gift of hospitality, gift of leadership, gifts of serving, gifts of teaching, gifts of healing, and there are more there. And before these lists, both Peter and Paul say, now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good, or as Peter says, or for serving one another. So the spiritual gifts are not for the benefit of the person who receives them, they're for the benefit of others there. Now, Paul, in a couple of chapters, chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians, chapter 12 of Romans, talks about the church as being like a body, and he talks about the importance of the individual gifts. And they're like different parts of the body. I've got a nose here, some ears here, 2 eyes and fingers and so on. And so since every Christian has a gift, if somebody is missing, or who should be there, not part of things, then this is going to be like a person missing an eye or missing a nose or something like that. And again, remember, all believers have spiritual gifts there. Two Two final sort of reasons for us as to gather together. Now I want to say something about some practicalities. Praying together is something special. Jesus said that whether two or three are gathered, well, God answers prayer, but there's something special about more than one person gathering together. And Jesus says remarkably, when two or three people are gathered in his name, he's there. And this is really remarkable, because here we are gathered together by doing church in the name of Jesus. And we don't think about this often enough, but Jesus said, when two or three or more, we've got more than two or three here, gathered in his name, he's there with us. And the final thing would be, another thing came out, is the Lord's Supper, Holy Communion, which I believe we're going to have next week. We can't do that unless people are gathered together there. Okay, so the two main points that we're making here is, there's a command in the Bible to gather together, and the Bible gives lots of reasons why we should gather together. Lots of things just don't make sense if the Christians are not gathering together. So let me end up with some practical considerations about this, and I'm going to lead with 6 action items. If Christians are going to gather together consistently, it's extremely helpful to have a regular time, and a time that is free from scheduling conflicts of interest, so that we can gather together. We know from both Acts of the Apostles and what St. Paul wrote to the Corinthian church that the practice of the early church in the very first days was to meet on Sundays, meet on Sunday mornings. Or actually, you meet multiple times on Sunday. And for the last 1,000 years or more, a large number of countries have been very accommodating of leaving Sundays free for Christians to gather together. It's a day of rest in both North and South America, and Europe, and so on. It's a non-working day. In the USA, employers are required by law to make a reasonable accommodation for religious practices, like Christians can gather together. Also, it's law in our country in state schools and universities, things and so on. We have to make accommodation for the beliefs and religious practices of people there. But over my lifetime, probably you've noticed this as well, there's been a kind of a creep on that in the USA, and there's a sort of growing problem of more and more things are getting scheduled at the time when Christians normally gather together, by say Sunday morning. So we have like nature walks, sports events, other things are getting scheduled, and so I think that the Christians need to in a polite and gentle way, just push back a little bit against that, and say, if this event is being organised on Sunday morning, no, that's when I go to church. And let me say that standing for these things can involve some sacrifice. Who has seen the movie Chariots of Fire? Good, it's a great movie. One of the key things in that movie is a famous Scottish runner called Eric Liddell, who also went on to become a famous missionary as well. He died in a Japanese internment camp during World War II. That he discovered that his best race, the one he was almost a surefire thing to get a gold medal on, was going to be run on a Sunday. And so he said, I'm not going to run in that. And the movie kind of just changes the plot slightly, but what he decided to do, he knew this was some months in advance, this is a problem. So he decided he was going to train for the 400 metres instead. And running 400 metres is not quite the same as running if you run as 100 metres, but he ended up getting the gold medal in the 400 metres, and he actually set the world record in that race too, which lasted for about 2 years, and then his European record lasted about 12 years after that. And he was given a note before the race from one of his trainers, which said, "He who honors God, God will honor." A quote from the Old Testament there. So that actually inspired him, he said, during his running there. Okay, so watch out for things that get in the way of his meeting Sunday morning. So I'm hoping in about 2 months' time to be running a half marathon on Sunday morning. I'm going to try to run really fast, so I only miss a few minutes of the service. Okay, let me end with 6 action items here. Okay, number 1, make gathering in church on Sunday morning a high priority. Whenever I've travelled around the world, if I've got hosts where I'm going, I tell my hosts, on Sunday I'd like to go to church, and they've been happy to arrange that, and that's led to some wonderful conversations. If you know, as people apparently lots of us do, who would claim to be followers of Jesus but don't go to church, well, invite them to come. If someone says, as apparently many of us have heard, that I can be a Christian without going to church, try to remember some of the things that I've said. And by the way, what was the reference to that verse in Hebrews?
Hebrews 10:25.
10:25, right? Okay, all down. Try to point these things out and give some of the reasons in a gentle way. Point number 4 is be careful not to do or say something which results in someone not coming to church or stop going to church. That's harmful to them and harmful to the church. There's a lot more to koinonia than just showing up on a Sunday morning like in the church here. So just consider all the one another things and gathering at other times. For example, in the church here we have a Zoom time over prayer. Fresh over Zoom, that's going to be next Saturday evening, 7:30. There's a midweek gathering here as well. Carol mentioned the Women's Bible, so there are other times to meet and to encourage one another as well. So the point number 6 action item is think about all those one another's and what koinonia means, and just think about ways in which you can, just to list some off here, which you can serve people, you can share things, participate, care for people, pray for people, encourage people, comfort people, love people, and show hospitality. Okay, so our time is up. Let's. I'd like us to end, if we could. Maybe learn it by now. We're just singing that song the Barbara and Nancy sang of a new commandment I give to you. So you have some musicians handy ready to play it. Okay, we do, so let's...
Lou, why don't you play it once through so we get the verse, and you guys want to sing it so that you
I
get the
think
words? Or?
let's all, for those who know, we'll sing together.
Yeah.
Same words.
Unto you, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you love
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. And is it gigabyte 1024 megabytes?
I bet it is.
All right, let's stand and circle out.